The hell's going on there?
All right, welcome everybody. I'm going to get started.
There.
All right, welcome everybody. I'm going to get started. So I'm Robert Young II, known as Robbie. I've seen many of you time and time again on our Wednesday virtual tasting. Once again, if you haven't already done so, please open up the bottle of your choosing. I'm going to sip along with us. So today we're going to be featuring our 2017 Alexander Valley Chardonnay, our 2017 Clone 17, and talking briefly about our 2018 Barrel Select, which many of you are familiar with. So, like I said, we're going to be talking about our Chardonnays. You can see the ones we offer today. And if you didn't know, the Thursday before Memorial Day is National Chardonnay Day. So we thought it'd be appropriate to talk about our lovely Chardonnays because that's what we're most well known for. And if you haven't joined us before, we always start off with a little story before we get into the. And today, what we're going to talk about is the Robert Young Clone 17 Chardonnay. So Robert Young, my grandfather, very well known for his Chardonnay, especially the Robert Young Clone 17, which is a type of Chardonnay grapevine that was heat treated to eliminate virus in the budwood. And that was actually developed by his son, Jim Young, in the early 80s. The picture over here to the right, if we're not in the way here, Jim Young is right here where my cursor is. He is my dad's the youngest of the kids, and then Jim. But this this picture was taken out right outside of our Bob's Burn Pile in our Scion vineyard. I believe in '97 when the winery, the first harvest for our winery. And if you didn't know, the Clone 17 Chardonnay is actually one of the most planted Chardonnay grapevines in the United States today. So anywhere out here, for the most part, not everybody, but a handful of wineries use our Chardonnay grapevine. And what you'll be tasting at those wineries is just the different winemaker making that wine, but it's still the same grapevine that we use here, which is pretty cool. And Jim Young and Robert actually patent that vine. So every vine that's sold today, the vineyard actually gets a royalty on, which is everlasting, which is really a way that he has left a legacy for the family. And here are the three Chardonnays we're going to be talking about today. On the left, a new Chardonnay we introduced is our 17 Clone 17. We just released our 2017 vintage back February, if I'm not mistaken, April. And it's a little bit of a lighter style Chardonnay in some steam bent barrels. The Alexander Valley Chardonnay is our classic Chardonnay we've been producing for a very long time, since '99. And that's something we have year round here in the tasting room. The Barrel Select off to the right-hand side. This is our quality Chardonnay. That definitely sees a little bit more new Chardonnay lovers. And now I'd like to hand it off to Matt Michael, our winemaker, who can actually talk a little bit more about these.
Thanks, Robbie. Hi, everyone. So yeah, just going through the wines. I mean, I think everyone's probably familiar with the Alexander Valley Chardonnay. That is our bread and butter wine. It's our mainstay. That's the wine that is kind of, if you come to Robert Young and you've tasted the wines, that's the wine most people fall in love with. We have the Clone 17 and the Barrel Select, and they're kind of offshoots. So what they are is they're different expressions of what we feel the Alexander Valley Chardonnay can go in if you choose to go in that direction. So the Alexander Valley Chardonnay is 30% new French oak. It's about 85% malolactic fermentation. And for people that don't know what that means, malolactic fermentation is basically, it softens the wine. So all of red wines go through malolactic fermentation. Only some white wines do. And it depends on whether or not you want to retain that acidity or not in the wine. So if you decide to put a wine through malolactic fermentation, like we do with our Chardonnays, or we do partially, it's to soften them up. It gives them a little bit of richness, a little bit of depth in the palate, a little bit more viscosity. So it's very typical with Chardonnays for them to go through malolactic, where you very rarely see a Pinot Grigio or a Sauvignon Blanc go through malolactic fermentation. And the reason being is in those varieties, you want to keep that acidity. But with Chardonnay, you want that richness and you want that depth. Now, people are always like, well, why do they do that with Chardonnay? Well, one of the main reasons is that Chardonnay is a non-aromatic grape varietal. So it doesn't have a lot of native aromatics. So it really relies heavily on things like lees aging and barrels to really give those aromas. So a lot of times the things that we associate with aromas on Chardonnay aren't necessarily aromas that come from the grape. It's stuff that comes from the oak. So you think about butterscotch, caramel, vanilla, those are all things that come from the barrel. So typically when you have a Chardonnay aromatic, you can think about ripe pear, some people say roasted pear, maybe applesauce. That's about as exotic as it gets, unless you get out to the Sonoma Coast where it's just really cool and you can get some different things going on. But for the most part, that's what Chardonnay has to offer. So when we branched out, the barrel select is really just a more exotic expression. So it's got a little bit more new French oak. So think more richness, more of that caramel. See the 100% malolactic fermentation on that, more of that viscosity, more of that just kind of spreading across the palate. More sweetness, but it's not sweetness from sugar, it's sweetness from the oak. So it's a different expression. I would say it's a more full-bodied expression of Chardonnay. It's probably more akin to what people were drinking 20 years ago regularly. We always talk about the pendulum in the wine industry. It swings back and forth. And right now, for whatever reason, people have decided that oaky Chardonnays aren't in, and people are leaning more towards the unoaked style. I find that the oak brings a certain lift and a certain freshness to the wine that you don't get on the unoaked style. So we really think that our style marries well with this site here and where we grow our fruit. And then we get to the Clone 17, which is a new one. And the Clone 17 is 35% new French oak. The difference here, though, is the barrels are steam bent. And we have a couple slides we'll show you in a second here. But essentially what that means, if you were on the Zoom call last, I think 2 Wednesdays ago, barrels are mostly toasted over fire, and it serves two purposes. It lignifies the sugars in the wood. There it is. So this is how they're toasted. You can see the picture of the fire, but it also helps bend the barrel so they can put those bottom hoops in. So it's actually, it serves two purposes. And then while they're toasting, there's different gradients of toasting there. So you have light, medium plus, heavy. And sorry, I pulled this from a French website. So charbon means carbon, or blackened. And that's really for the whiskey barrels. That doesn't really apply to wine. But essentially, those are the gradients of toasting. So it serves two purposes. It gives some aroma complexity and flavor complexity to the wine. And the amount of toasting, as you can imagine, will reflect in the wine. So if you go heavy, think smoke, think asphalt, tar, things like that. Medium plus is going to be kind of more caramel, butterscotch. Medium's probably going to be just a light kiss, a little bit more fruit there. And light is going to be almost all fruit driven. It also affects how they present in the palate. So kind of the more you toast, the more viscosity you get out of the wine as it ages in those barrels. Because what's happening with the fire, it's actually lignifying the sugars in there. And so you're getting this perception of sugar on your palate, or sweetness. Even though there is no sweetness, you get that perception. So the more you toast, the more rich and full body that wine will feel. Now, probably if you go to the next slide there. So this is a steam bent barrel. This is kind of a newer thing. And I think what they were trying to do there, this serves two purposes. So one purpose is they bend the barrels. The other purpose is that this hot steam bath that it's in, you can see there's some in the background there too. And they're dropping these barrels in the water. And when it's doing it, it's also leaching more tannin out of the wood. And so tannin is kind of a generic term. It's something that happens in leather. It's something that happens in grape. tissue. It's something that happens in wood, but what it does is it gives an astringency on your palate. Like think about biting into a fresh persimmon, that astringency on your palate. So this helps leach some of that tannin out of the wood. And so you're bending it, but leaching the tannin. And so what you get is you get a lighter expression. So it's completely different from a fire bent barrel. And neither one is right or wrong. It's just how do you want to express your wine? So our thought with the Clone 17 was, well, we have this really unique clone. It's a Robert Young clone. It's Clone 17, grown only on our property here. Originating only on our property here. We feel like it's the best expression of our site. Why do we want to cover it up with oak? Let's just do this steam melt and just have this really gentle expression of the wine. So more fruit driven, less of the obvious barrel toast notes on there. So you get just a really pure expression of the fruit and the varietal there. So I think it's really interesting if you have all three of them together. If you have the Clone 17, you get this fruit-driven expression, light barrel. Even though it has more oak, it's 35% oak in the Alexander Valley. Because it's steam bent, it doesn't give that same butterscotch caramel note to it. And then you get the Alexander Valley, which is just a beautiful expression of terroir, matched with that barrel, and it just gives that lift, that sweetness, that viscosity. And then for those of you that like the full throttle Chardonnay, which I know there's somebody out there, the barrel select really gives that punch and really gives that viscosity. So it's really a complete expression of not only the sites we have here in the grapes, but also our clone and just showing it in different ways. It's kind of fun when you get them side by side, because more often than not, everyone always has it. You can run it in front of anyone, and they'll pick each one. There's no consistent thing with any of these Chardonnays. So I think it's a really good.
The German meat industry
What's that? What's happening?
very.
Matt, why don't you tell us your favorite of the three, or current favorite rather?
It goes back and forth. Last year it was a Clone 17. This year I think it's the barrel select, and I think it's a vintage thing really. For me, it always is. I just think that sometimes when you get, that's the one thing that makes it so hard about being a winemaker, being an aware, is that we have one time to make that vintage or that wine. And if you have a weird vintage or an off vintage, or maybe particularly not even a bad vintage, but maybe not great for that particular varietal, then you have all of this time to think about it and all this time to figure out, okay, how am I going to do it better next time if this vintage happens? Where in other industries like brewing or hard alcohol distillation, they're continuously making a batch over and over again. So there's no expression of that vintage. So for me, it just kind of changes year to year, but I really like them all. And I say if pressed, the AV Chard is still my favorite for sure.
Do we see different blocks of different Chardonnay and all the three Chardonnays? Different grapes? Yes,
we do. So my predecessor, Kevin Warren, who I'm sure everyone knows.
He loves the Chardonnay too, by the way.
He does. And this is his wine. I haven't done anything. I had an angry mob when I took over here telling me not to change the formula for the AV Chard, and I was very much aware of that. So the blocks that he picked out for the AV Chard are still the blocks we use. It's mostly almost all Clone 17 Robert Young Chard. We have a small block that has two different clones, Clone 96 and 76 that are Dijon clones. I should probably, a lot of people get confused by clones, the terminology clone. They think, okay, it was like, are you hovering over a petri dish making clone? It's not. Basically what it is you're walking out in a vineyard and you're picking out mutations in the vineyard. And it's amazing how quickly grapevines mutate. So you can have a white variety that'll mutate, and one of the branches that comes up will produce red grapes. Now, it's not common, but it happens. And so then you can select that out in the field and then propagate it and plant your vineyard to that, and you have a new clone. You could call it red Chardonnay if you want it. But they also mutate in ways that they have smaller clusters or bigger clusters, smaller berries or bigger berries. Maybe the clusters are tight together like a grenade, or maybe they hang really loose and like scrabbly. But all of those things are mutations. And then if you select that mutation, then you can create your own clone. So essentially that's what we did with our Clone 17. We selected from the old Wente clone, which is one of the most famous California Chardonnay clones, and then we heat treated it, cleaned a virus, and then got designation to call it the Robert Young Clone 17 because it was a variance of the Wente clone. So that's essentially what a clone is. The thing that's special about Clone 17 for us is that it performs particularly well here. We probably wouldn't be able to grow Chardonnay here if we didn't have our huge diurnal temperature swing. And what that means is that it could be 105, 110 during the day, but it's always 50 degrees in the morning. So they call it that diurnal swing. So that temperature decrease overnight really preserves acidity in the fruit, and it gives it the flavor and the complexity. So it's really important, not only to grow Chardonnay in a warm area like this, but also for this particular clone seems to perform very well on our site here. So the clone is important in the area and the blocks that we choose from. So everything that Kevin has done, I've continued on. I haven't ventured out into too many. We've played around with little blocks. Turns out Kevin was right. We got the best blocks. So.
Very cool. Couple real quick shout outs. I'm probably the resident Chardonnay queen. So I did want to pay homage to the Gaffners, who of course love our Chardonnay. And then Lori Nusser, I don't know if you're with us, but thank you so much for your continued support as well. And my buddy Tina, that used to work with us all at Robert Young. She's my Chardsies buddy. Anyways, just wanted to say that.
Thank you, Lindsay. And by the way, Matt, you may not remember this, but just after you became the winemaker, it was Ranch Day. And I came up to you and I said, don't you dare change change the technique.
You weren't the only one, trust me.
I said that too, Rosemary.
All right, I think we're going to move on to our tasting notes on the 3 different Chardonnays. If you'd like to talk briefly on those, Matt. I know you just kind of mentioned 3.
Yeah, for sure. So Alexander Valley Chardonnay is our mainstay, and we went through this. We always do aromatics, we do body texture and flavor. And ideally it shouldn't change too much, but it always changes because they're vintages and they're different, and you're going to get different expressions. But ideally, they should kind of run in a narrow band. And that's what our Alexander Valley Chardonnay does. I mean, in this vintage, we got a lot of lemon meringue, butterscotch, vanilla bean. Very rich, very lush, good acidity on it. And that's a vintage. 17 was that heavy rain year. Everything was delayed out. So we had a late pick that year because we just couldn't get the acid drop and the sugars up in the grape. But it's exactly what you would expect and what you would expect from the Robert Young Chardonnay. This is the Clone 17 expression to the fullest, and then the flavor yield butterscotch, pear, apple tart, and vanilla cream. This vintage is a little bit differently in that the fact that we aged it a little bit longer in French oak. There was a little bit of a hiccup with our bottling schedule, so you'll probably see a little bit more complexity there in the oak attributes in the wine.
Just a quick question for you, Matt. I think that people have often wondered this. In terms of harvesting, where does Chardonnay fall? I mean, now we make so many varietals. How kind of does that, like what would be first, what would be last, and what's kind of the time frame?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So most of if you can think of varietals, and if anyone knows anything about France or has studied the map there in the growing regions, the Burgundian varietals are way up north. And so they have to be early ripeners because they just don't get a very hot growing season. And so they need to really ripen quickly. So in California, where we get abundant sunshine, abundant heat, it's not really an issue for us. So it's more about planting them in a place that's going to do best for them based on temperatures and fog that comes in to suppress daytime temperatures. Like I spoke to earlier, we have that diurnal temperature swing that really drops the temp down at night and cools everything down. So Chardonnay and Pinot Noir are always first, always. Right behind that would be Zinfandel. And then you have varieties like Merlot that are kind of in the middle. and then and I'm speaking on very broad terms about varietals that everyone knows.
Right.
And towards the end would be Syrah and Cabernet Sauvignon, and then Petit Verdot. So it just kind of depends on where they originally came from. A lot of these places that grew these varietals for eons, they picked those varietals because they could ripen and perform in their very specific conditions. Now, we've been in the wine industry here for 40 or 50 years. We just haven't had that time. So a lot of our information comes from Europe, and we try to figure out how it works in our unique ecosystem here, essentially.
Interesting. And we have a question from Steve and actually a couple different members. What are the big differences? Because some of our members and some of the folks out there still have the 16 Chardonnay. Do you have any notes on the differences between the 16 and the 17, as the 17 is more of a new release for us?
Yeah. I think the 16 overall is more of it's a vintage thing. It's a little bit more full body, a little bit richer. And just overall, it's got that just kind of big viscosity going on. The 17s have a little bit more acid to them, and a little bit more streamlined. I would call the 17 vintage a little bit more elegant than the 16. So just kind of as a rule of thumb, that would be the difference between them.
Okay. And then another thing to note, Robbie McKenzie and myself see this often being in the tasting room. A lot of folks will say, as they do with Merlot, but typically with our Chardonnay, oh, I don't care for a fuller bodied Chardonnay, or no, thank you, I'm not a Chardonnay person. And then we make them taste it if they're willing. And they often just love it regardless. I mean, whether it's one of the three, but it's typically the classic AV Chard. Why is that, would you say?
I don't know why that is. I think for whatever reason, Chardonnay is kind of taking the same fate as Merlot. I think there's a lot of it planted throughout the state that's not planted in great areas. And I think when it's not planted in great areas, it makes marginal wines. I think if you have enough of those marginal wines, you're like, I don't particularly care for this varietal. But I think if you get to places that can grow it correctly, it's very site specific, just like Merlot is too. You can produce some wonderful wines that are very intriguing. And I think that's the main thing, is that you have to really seek out producers that are really making the effort to grow it in the right place and grow.
Right, and folks are noting that it's very well balanced. Quick question. I believe it was the first year of the Clone 17, it was the 16, wasn't it?
16, yeah.
Okay. And then what about for the Viognier and Malone? Was that 17 for both? I know we're on 18 and 19 collectively.
The 17, I believe, for the Viognier, and 18 for the Malone.
18 for the Malone. And probably 17 for the SB, I think, right?
17 for SB, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So those are all new. Those were all kind of new projects that we decided to do. A lot of it is just, we took a risk. We have these grapes, let's crush a ton or two and see how it turns out. If it doesn't work, then we can move on. But, it turns out that this site here grows a lot of really interesting fruit and really good quality fruit. So we
absolutely. And I think you found your balance too with the rosé. The rosé has been very popular this year, and this is, I think, the third year for the rosé. So it seems like that Malbec Merlot combination is really dialed in this year.
Yeah, it's a work in progress. It always is. It's one of the hardest things to do, is to come to a new site, because you don't know. I don't know these vineyards. I didn't know these vineyards. I know them a little better now. That's really important as a winemaker, is you have to know the vineyard. You have to know the fruit. And it really helps if you work under a winemaker and that winemaker leaves, and then you become a winemaker, because you've already learned the vineyards. But when you come in new, it just takes a year or two to kind of figure things out. Okay, when can I pick them? How much can I water? How much can I stress them? So all of those things play into like picking and fruit quality and all that. So it just takes a couple of years to kind of get your head around on that, and then you can dial it in.
Well, especially since Kevin was here for so long prior to you coming on board. That's great.
Exactly, yeah.
Let's see, comment about the 19 Rosé and 19 Malone. They love them. They're brilliant. Awesome.
Oh, thank you.
Rob, you want to move on with the slides and see if maybe some other questions arise?
Yeah, I was going to ask you a question that I saw in the chat. For our Chardonnays, are they coming from one specific vineyard or multiple vineyards?
So for people that haven't been to the estate, there's probably one or two on here, I don't know. but most people have. I talked last week or the week before, I can't remember, about the Cabernets up on the hill and the hillside vineyards and why that was so important for high quality Cabernet production, because the soil is not as deep, it's not as rich, it's more rocky, it's more loamy, and that translates to the vines being a little bit more stressed out, because when we get our rain during the winter and then it stops raining, soil dries out, slows the vines down because they don't have a deep soil bed to grow in to send roots down for water. And then we can kind of control it with drip irrigation. We can control how we water them. Why that's important? Because if there's a deep water table in the soil and the soil is really fertile, the vines will just keep growing and they'll make really big berries. And that's not great for red wine because it's all about the skin to berry juice ratio. So on the hillside, we get that for Cabernet. On the valley floor is where we grow all the Chardonnay. And that's a completely different scenario, because with white wines, you harvest the fruit and then you put them directly in the wine press and you press the juice away from the skins. So you're not looking for a lot of concentration from the skins. You're not looking for a lot of phenolics from the skins. And if you stress white grape varietals out, in other words, you don't give them a lot of water, they produce small berries, you're going to get what they call a phenolic. It almost, it's like a tannic white wine. So all of our whites are grown in the valley floor down there where we have deep alluvial soil. It produces a really wonderful expression, and they're all kind of lumped together, the blocks there. I haven't quite picked Jim Young's brain on why that they all kind of got together, but I'm sure there's a reason based on the soil profile down there.
And guys, I'm using Matt too a little bit because he's actually bottling next week, so we won't have him online next week. So Matt, tell us kind of what you would think is like the perfect temperature for a white versus red fridge, or the upper lower, however you figure, because I'm gonna need to reset those shortly.
That's a tough one. It kind of depends on what you're serving. So kind of the rule of thumb is that if you have something aromatic and crisp, like a Sauvignon Blanc or Pinot Grigio, it's on the cooler side, like maybe 50, 53 to 56, somewhere in there. The richer a wine is, like our barrel select Chardonnay, you're gonna wanna have that 60, 61, something like that. And the reason being is that the crisper, the more aromatic, they don't need that warmth to open up, where the barrel richness and the lees richness, they need a little bit warmer temperature to really express themselves. So with red wines, typically 58, 59, somewhere in there is good. Usually that's why it's a magical thing, but it just so turns out that if you dig a hole in the ground that's deep enough, that's generally what the temperature is, which is why there's so many wine caves in the area.
I was gonna say the cave's pretty chilly.
Yeah, cave's about 56 year round.
Okay. And then since Barrel Select is up, you picked the ripest Chard for the Barrel Select, is that correct?
Yeah, it's not like we do a gradient. So essentially what I do is I start picking early for the Alexander Valley Chardonnay, and I pick right through the cycle. But in the meantime, I'm picking Clone 17 and Barrel Select as well. So for the Alexander Valley Chard, I want a gradient. I want some stuff early that has a little bit higher acid, and some stuff later that has more sugar and ripeness to it. And that kind of gives us the blend, so you get some acidity and some ripeness. With the Barrel Select and the Clone 17, those are a little bit more exotic. So I tend to kind of slant the curve a little bit on the riper side. But again, it's falling under Kevin's kind of traditional picking scenarios, and we went through all that, and we went through all of his charts and exhaustive picking notes to see. So we have a good kind of working timeline for that stuff.
Got it. And then just refreshing my memory for the Barrel Select, we skipped 2016, right? We went 15 to 17, and that was Barrel Select's big return was 17.
Correct. Yeah. So
which is sold out.
One of the things that's cool about a winery like this, it's family owned and cares about quality and cares about what they present, is that every once in a while you just declassify something because it doesn't make the cut. And so in 2016 we declassified the Barrel Select just because it didn't make the cut. So and that happens. It's brands that put something out every year just because. Hopefully they're looking at that stuff, but every once in a while you just got to say, this doesn't make the cut, and we're not going to put it out there. So that's what happened.
Got it. And then I'm noticing a slightly lesser percentage in the new oak for the barrel select for this year. That was obviously on purpose, correct?
Yeah. So it used to be 100% new oak. And what we found was, I talked to Kevin about it too, and he admittedly told me that he would have liked to start dialing that back down. I think, with the Bob's Burn Pile, it works beautifully because that Cabernet is so rich and it's almost like a sponge for that new oak. But sometimes the Chardonnay just kind of gets overwhelmed by it. And so we had a lot of conversations about that and a lot of discussion about it. And, so we decided collectively, as I left, that we would kind of talk about that, moving it off to a different direction. And so that's kind of how we end up with the 60%. Is it's still plenty of new oak. I mean, there's no doubting there's new oak on there, but it's not quite the impact and the wallop it had before. So I think it kind of balances things out a little better, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And guys, please continue to ask your questions either in the chat room or through your video. Unmute yourself if you're comfortable. But everybody drink up. Cheers. Cheers to Chardonnay. Chardonnay day tomorrow. And
so I talked a little bit about this, the what makes our Chardonnay unique. I think there's really two things. It's the clone. So our clone 17 has been grown here since 1980-ish. And we've had a lot of time to figure out how to grow that clone here, which gives us a very unique advantage over other places that are just planting it now and figuring it out. We've had a lot of time to noodle out what it takes to grow that clone here. And the other thing is just the site. And you hear it over and over again, but you really can't make good wine from bad sites. You just can't. It's just the way it is. I mean, the wine is a direct expression of where you're growing it. And the complexity, the things that you get when you have a great wine, you can't get that from a bad site. So it's just this site is so good for growing wine. It really is.
Got it. And then just a couple of little things. The barrel select, the 17, I'm pretty sure is completely sold out. The 18 will be available in a couple months here. And we will have, I think, a few large formats of that as well. So that should be like late August, early September. Another question is food pairings for these three wines. And I would say you could go pretty casual, some of these too. My personal favorite is popcorn with the classic Chardonnay.
There we go. Yeah.
Really good, I swear.
For sure. I think anything, so a broad range of cheeses, from soft to hard. You probably want to get more of the nutty type cheese profile. Anything I think brie related or semi-soft is good. Think of like cream sauce pastas, any sort of chicken dish, whether it's something you saute or something you grill. If it's got a sauce on it, it's going to be perfect. Light pork dishes. You can run the gamut with like fatty, richer fishes like tilapia and things like that. So there's a lot of options for Chardonnay. What you want to do is with the food stuff is think about, the dishes, our Chardonnay is Thousand Valley is medium, full bodied, richer. So think about when you're having a fish, you want to have something that's kind of richer for it to kind of match that profile on your palate. And same thing with cheeses. So, and across, you can do a pasta dish with Alfredo sauce or something like that. There's infinite combinations, but part of the fun is just to experiment too. I do it all the time. I kind of push the boundaries on things that I won't think work, and sometimes they do. So.
Awesome. I think you covered this last time or two Wednesdays ago, but for the used barrels, how many times will we utilize them for the vintages before we get rid or we sell them off?
Usually 4 years. So the brand new barrels have the most impact. My favorite barrels are what I call one pass, because in the past you would call them 1-year-old barrels if you emptied all the barrels before harvest and bottle your wine. We don't. We carry them over, so we bottle them after harvest. And the barrels for the whites are usually 15 months, 16 months used, so it's a little bit more than a year. So we call them one pass. Those are my favorite barrels the second time around because they still have a little oak to them, but it's not as intense as the new barrels, and they give you just kind of this perfect combination of oak and fruit. And then the 3 or 2 pass and 3 pass barrels, so those would be more neutral. and what I mean by neutral is it's almost like an inert vessel. It doesn't really give a lot to the wine. It's just a storage vessel, essentially.
A little shout out for the Chardonnay with a little salmon pairing. And then
Oh, there
Laura,
you go.
hi Laura, has said that for Thanksgiving, a Maga Chard is just perfect. And I happen to agree. I love me some holiday Chardonnay.
Sometimes you need an extra bottle, yeah, for sure.
And then we have a question from Diane about the Malone. Where does that fit in with our Chardonnays?
I didn't catch that. What, Robbie? Sorry.
Oh, sorry. The Malone. Where does that fit in with our Chards?
So the Malone is, I think I mentioned this before. It's between the Chardonnay and the Sauvignon Blanc. So it doesn't have anywhere near the viscosity or the richness of the Chardonnay. It doesn't have the acidity and the brightness of Sauvignon Blanc. So it probably falls right in the middle. And that one, to me, you could kind of cross over with a lot of different foods. You know, you could definitely do oysters with that. You can definitely do some of those lighter fish like that with it. But it doesn't have that richness and viscosity that the Chardonnay does. So for me, it kind of falls right in the middle between your Sauvignon Blanc and your Chardonnay.
Thank you. Yeah, feel free to plug in some more questions if you have any more in there before we wrap up. Like Lindsay said, we won't have Matt with us next week, so if anybody has anything they can think of, it's a good time to ask right now.
We're going to kind of reveal some fun things for summer. We've got some new large formats available, but also the one varietal that we haven't tasted and haven't really talked about is Malbec. So I know it's warm out, but if anyone's interested, if that's a topic we'd like to cover, please let me know. Shoot me an email. If you need some Malbec, let me know. But yeah, that's one that we haven't really talked about if anyone's interested. What do you what do you recommend to stop us from drinking the entire bottle? We don't seem to have much self-control. Should have probably heard that.
We make a lot more money if you drink all of it.
And that was a
Yeah, I don't know.
question. That wasn't from
You
me.
gotta finish it or turn it into sangria.
That's hilarious.
Only one?
Only one.
Oh, Dana's into the Malbec. Okay, cool. Maybe we'll just
Magnum.
Yeah, and I just wanted to speak on the property a little bit too. This is just my personal thoughts, but it's very, very unusual for a property to be able to produce Chardonnay of this caliber and Cabernet of this caliber. It's usually kind of you're in one or the other, and so it's been really fun to work with the vineyards and work with this property and see what we can produce here. Because this is kind of this area here it gets warm, and so you think just naturally, intuitively, as a winemaker, that it wouldn't work for Chardonnay, but there is just this intense temperature drop at night. I mean, it's nothing literally during harvest for it to be 105, and it come in, it'll be 48 degrees in the morning, and that is what makes it work. But it's also what makes Cabernet work out here too, because we get that. But we can draw that season out because we have those really chilly mornings. I mean, I almost feel crazy when I go back and forth between the winery and outside during harvest, because we keep the winery at 52 degrees and outside, like in 2017, it got to 112 here. And it's that temperature swing. It's really intense, but it really, coupled with the soil, coupled with the microclimate, it really makes everything special here. And I just can't emphasize that enough. It's a unique space to grow wine.
just a note on here. Do you have anything to speak to the fact that our Chardonnays age so well? I mean, it is really pretty noteworthy how long ours can go. And I think the employees can certainly attest to that, because sometimes we get a special 2010 or 9 or something in those Christmas packs, and it's like, wow, that's still amazing.
Yeah. I don't quite know what it is. You know, it's probably some of it's sight. Probably some of it is the style that Kevin chose to originally make the wine in. It's allowed it to be ageable.
Yeah.
You can get different winemaking styles that won't allow the wine to age as well. So it's a combination, I think, of everything. I have to say, when I came here, Kevin wanted to do a 10-year vertical with me of the Chardonnays. I was like, well, we don't really have to go past 5 years. Those probably won't hold up. He's like, I think you'll be surprised. And so we did them, and sure enough, they all held up. So there's just something about, it's probably a combination of the clone, the site, and the winemaking style that really allows them to age. And that's not typical. I mean, you can't usually drink Chardonnays that are 8, 9, 10 years old very successfully out here. So this is a good place for it for sure.
Very cool. Thanks.
Mhm.
So what I'd like to do is kind of wrap things up here. We're getting close to the end. This will give you some time to think of more questions if you happen to have any. But just a little thank you for joining us today. So this is actually an incredible offer. We're doing 10% off 6 or more bottles in addition to your wine club discount.
Or 10% if you're not a member also.
And if you're not a member as well. So if you're getting 20, you will get 30%, which is amazing. And if you know us, we don't typically discount our wine, so it's something to take advantage of. And we are extending our shipping promo as well, which many of you have taken advantage of. For 3 bottles, $10, 6 bottles, $7, and 12 bottles is complimentary, and you can mix or match anything we have available as well.
And there's a question, can you pre-purchase the 18
Yes,
Gerald
you can.
Select?
Yep.
Absolutely.
I saw that come up.
Pick up
My
every-
answer was yes, but I want to check with you.
Yeah, it's definitely with that, it's a good idea to do so. That I think we released last by September, and I believe by Christmas it was already sold out.
Yeah, we'll sell out of that usually within 3 to 6 months, certainly. And that's really good for holidays too. So yeah, you can just shoot me an email, Diana, or give us a call or what have you. No, it does not apply just to the Chardonnay. It's whatever you would like to order. The shipping discount is extended, I think through the end of the month at least, depending on when we open. We haven't really solidified all that stuff yet. And then, yeah, again, Rob, you want to switch to the next slide? Yeah, so we're going to do this for one more Wednesday, which is going to be next Wednesday at 3, just how we've been doing it. Matt's unavailable because he's bottling, but we will be continuing this probably one Wednesday a month. We haven't really decided specifics, but if anyone has a day or time that they think is best, or maybe a topic that we'd like to talk about, that would be great. And we're releasing some new fun large formats in some of our summer series wines, like our Rosé and SB. So, spoiler alert for next week.
Yeah, and also I'll mention going in the as we go forward and we get out of quarantine, if you guys still want to do these, like for example, if you had, yourself a couple and you had another couple friends either across the U.S. or local, and you wanted to get by and do this just one-on-one, we certainly could accommodate for you. Because we all enjoy doing these, and I really enjoy doing it, and I wouldn't mind talking about the wine and hanging out and drinking with you guys. So keep that in mind. We're open to it.
And just a couple more questions here. Yes, Jeffrey, give me a call right now. You're welcome to, or my email. Diana, in terms of when we open, it's a little up in the air. Napa County just opened, I think tomorrow they'll be open for social distancing tastings and appointment only and things like that. I don't know all the specifics. As a county, we have petitioned, to open sooner than later as well. That is not quite approved, but we anticipate being opened at the latest early June by appointment only, and we're going to offer noon to 5 daily, but you will need an appointment so that we can sanitize and service appropriately.
Hey, Lindsay, can I ask a question of Matt?
Sure.
Yeah.
I texted Robbie earlier, but I thought I'd just ask it. Matt, every once in a while, by the way, there's no bigger fans of the Chardonnays than us, right? But every once in a while, we'll get a bottle that has a little bit of an aftertaste that when we're with friends and introducing them, if they're not big Chardonnay people, they tend to back away. It's almost like, and Robbie said it might be a tannin perhaps issue, but I wanted to comment. Do you get that sometimes? This is maybe with the Alexander Valley, I can't tell you a year, but just every so often.
So it's a sporadic thing. It's not a consistent thing.
No, yeah, not at all.
Brian,
So
you're
most likely it's due to, sorry, most likely it's due to the cork. So there's, people are familiar with like cork taint, which is best described as mustiness. Some people say it smells like grandma's attic or something like that.
Yeah.
But there's other forms of cork taint that can happen. So it's not just TCA, not just that. So you can get other things that happen from the cork. So the cork is, from bark, from a tree.
Yeah.
And they treat it the best they can, but it's a natural product. So you're gonna get variants sometimes. It's out of our control. So I would venture to say that's most likely what's happening, because if it was a consistent thing throughout, then that would just be the wine. But if it's a sporadic thing, the only thing that would be different would be the cork closure.
Okay, thank you.
That makes sense.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, the other thing to look at too is temperature, because if there's a variation in temperature, it's going to really affect what you're going to get on the wine. You probably serve it the same way, but that's just another indicator. Or sometimes, we see a bottle that might be a little funky right up front, but it blows off, and that's just a natural part of wine evolving in the bottle. So look for that as well, I guess.
I think Scott, for us, what I notice is that it's definitely an aftertaste. It's almost it's something like, we're drinking a 16 right now that is just, I've never smoked crack, but this is as close.
Oh, it's crack. There's no question.
This is good as it gets. So,
It's really good crack is what they
well, I assume, but this is really good. So, we've been members for long enough, and we've had, so many bottles. Just every once in a while, something on that aftertaste. And I was just curious, maybe it's just, a bad bottle or something. But
well, Brian, where do you live, Brian?
we're in Northern Virginia,
Oh, okay.
home of really shitty wine. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, it all started out there, though.
Caution you, this is a recorded line.
Well, the reason I asked, Brian, would be if you were local and could bring that bottle by and let us taste it. That would be a cool thing, and we certainly would, replace it. But
Scott's always trying to get wine.
Yeah, we want to see what's going on. And
Listen, we make the trip out as much as we can every year, hopefully. So don't worry. We
Okay.
It's just a question to ask, to educate myself.
It should be really, really, really nice, because we open these, in the tasting room, we're opening up a lot of wine. And so we can see the consistency of the wine. And when you get a rough edge somewhere, it's pretty obvious. And and maybe it's not what you would say corked, the real wet cardboard, but it's just off a little.
Yeah.
And maybe that means that you caught it early before it really got corked. And so that's it should be luscious. It should be what you're just experiencing right now.
Yeah.
You're drinking a wine going, oh yeah, I love this place.
98% of the time it is. So
Yeah. So
Thank
that's, it should be really good.
It is.
Does Robert Young do you guys ever travel to the East Coast and do, any, see other wineries do that?
We will absolutely start doing that once travel gets back to normal. We absolutely can do winemaker dinners. Signing you up, Matt. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, okay.
Hospitality dinners. Rob's fantastic, and we've done quite a few of these local. To answer your question, we have not yet really ventured much outside of, say, LA, but it's definitely an option. And my boss is currently on the line as well, so that's a good.
Hey, Brian, how many friends do you have?
Well,
if you could bring enough people for a dinner at your house, that might entice these guys to let somebody come out there and entertain the troops,
100%.
I can do one better. We live in a farming community where we have a wine club that I could probably bring 100 people to our community center if Robbie or Matt wanted to come out. So that's what I want to do is promote you guys, on the East Coast here.
Well, you can get me out for a lot less than that, so no problem. We can talk Robbie into it. He'd love that. That'd be awesome.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
we've done that even in New Mexico. We've done dinner parties and receptions and such, and it's been really successful. We just mail the wine and mail all the collateral and show up with bells on, and it seems to work pretty good. You just provide the people and catering or what have you, and we go from there.
I'm
We love that.
happy to promote it. Just would need to talk through the logistics.
We can help with that.
That's doable. We'll talk the family into it.
Excellent.
Yeah.
That would be a great idea.
It'd be really, really, I know wineries that have done that, very successful across the board. People really love it. They love the geeky stuff, so.
Yeah, it's probably easier for us to come to every one of you than you come to us, Especially if you have multiple couples participating.
Well, you got a group of 100, that could be okay.
That's
It's got to be worth your while. But I know, Camus and Kate,
Hey, Robbie.
they come out this way.
Yes.
If they can hear me. Okay. Oh,
Yeah,
I
it
had a
sounds like
question.
you're living in, a terrible area. You're in a beautiful part of the world. Not bad.
Go ahead, Laura.
Go ahead, Laura.
Oh, for the cruise, I'm just curious when we talk about cases of wine, like for the one that we were supposed to go on just in April, how many cases, and maybe Karen knows this, but how many cases do you actually have to order for a cruise like that? Because we were on a cruise one time with the Sea Dream in the Caribbean, and granted, it wasn't nearly as good wine as Robert Young, but they ran out of wine. But they found more.
It's a bad cruise.
So this is Karen. I can answer that because we did our first cruise last year on the Danube. And so we send over there's maybe about 100, 120 people. We send over 30 cases of wine. And so the way that it works on these cruises is that most of the wines that you're drinking are on the ship every night are the regional wines. But we have 3 seminars educational seminars where we pour our wines. We have 1 winemaker dinner that's all paired, the whole boat is paired with our wines. Then we are all have essential provisions, and after dinner we're mingling with everybody with a lot of wine. But slight funny story, we had somebody working for us at the time, and they ordered all the wine in 2 weeks. Lindsay's laughing because she remembers this. 2 weeks before we all left for the cruise, we realized that she had mistaken the count, and instead of sending 3 cases of each wine, she sent 3 bottles of each wine. And so in the last minute, we were frantically air freighting cases and cases of wine. Anyway, it was fabulous. Trust me, you're not going to be shy of beautiful Robert Young wines on the cruises.
And to answer your question, Jeff, no, we will not run out of wine for you.
Yeah.
And the rosé is made of Malbec and Merlot. Well, thanks again for joining us, guys. Again, email me if you have questions, if you need to give me a call. Fantastic. We hope to see you next week and beyond. And have a great night.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers, Scott.
Yeah, good to see you guys. And all you other folks.